Hi there, I'm Leah, and welcome to the House of Hormones podcast. Welcome, Dr. Kelly, to the House of Hormones podcast. I am, as you know, absolutely thrilled to have you here today. I'm so excited. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You're possibly one of the most inspirational women in the world of women's health at the moment.
Oh,
you are, and you definitely
that's
are.
so nice.
What inspired you to, going way back when, what inspired you to get involved with women's health?
A patient. So I'm a urologist. We are, for people who don't know what that is, we're surgeons of the genital urinary system, the pelvis, stereotypically male sexual health. And, we invented Viagra. We have 5 different ways to get the penis hard, like very comfortable with male testosterone, male hormones, male erections, male ejaculation. You do not do any surgery on a man's pelvis without consenting him about the risks of sexual dysfunction. This comes to importance when we talk about how women are counseled. And, was kind of going along doing that, getting a little bored 7 years into the career, had a patient come into my office who was crying over some sexual health issues. And I loved her. This was not a stranger. This was somebody I loved. And so I think that was the additional bond of I don't know how to help you. Does anybody know how to help you? And furthermore, I was told women are difficult, they're complicated, we'll never figure them out. And by the way, the gynecologists are taking care of them. And I wanted to know at that point, is any of that true? So I just started to deep dive into female sexual health and how does desire work? How does orgasms work? Oh my gosh, the majority of women don't have orgasms by putting a penis in their vagina. Are you kidding me? How come we didn't get taught that? Right? Clitorises aren't self-lubricating. Either are penises. Why don't we use more lube? Just kind of all of this zeitgeist dogma of if only people had good information, they wouldn't feel so broken. And then from that came hormones, because I'm well, sex becomes painful when your estrogen goes away. And vaginal estrogen is incredibly safe. It's over the counter in the UK now, right? And that's how safe it is. But wait, women are afraid of hormones. Oh, why are they afraid of hormones? Oh, what's the WHI? So the point being, I didn't get taught any of this in med school or in surgery training. All of this is hard-won hours and days and weeks of me now reading the literature, understanding all of this, understanding why women are afraid, understanding the amazing benefits of hormones. And really, it's a self-taught obsession. I started the podcast, You Are Not Broken, 5 years ago. It's now in the top 5 in medicine in America for podcasts, full of men. Besides me and Gabrielle Lyon, the 2 big medicine female podcasters. The You Are Not Broken book has come out, and then the second book is coming out September 2025, and that is all about unabashedly a pro-hormone book, because I just feel that's the book that's needed right now. Listen, I got your back. There's tons of days. At the end of the day, I don't care. Because somebody was asking me the other day, so what's your goal? Do you want all women on hormones? And I'm truthfully, I don't give a shit if you take hormones or not. I don't care. But I care that you have the knowledge, and I care that you made the decision based upon facts, not fear. What you want to do with those facts, I don't care. I can't care about your vagina more than you, right? So I'm I don't care. But I care that you have the knowledge to understand what's happening to your body and make decisions based upon that knowledge.
I love how inspiring you are, and I just wish for everybody who hasn't read your book, they must. And I'm so excited for this next
Thank you.
book, because I want to dig into this. We're so going to dig into this, the world of talking about HRT. For the people that don't understand, okay, I really want to dig into testosterone in a minute, but just an overview of HRT and how you see HRT. And then maybe we can talk a little bit about why people were so put off HRT and the Lancet report.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great place to start, because people don't understand. People think menopause is no more periods and some hot flashes. And then when the hot flashes are done, that means menopause is done. When instead, those 2 things, no periods and hot flashes, are actually symptoms of what is actually happening. And what is actually happening is you are outliving your ovaries. Now, when we outlive other things like eyes, hearing, teeth, bones, hips, heart, pancreases. When we outlive other things, what do? We try to replace them. Hair, right? So why are we so exceptional with ovaries? When we outlive our testicles, we replace those.
But can I just stop you for a second there? Because I know you're going to go, but why? Like from all of your extensive research, what is the reason? Why?
Why we're outliving our ovaries?
No. Why have we not looked into research this more? So before we go into more about that, what
I don't know, because medicine was created by men for men. That women have been social, cultural message to put up with suffering. That we care more about treating disease than preventing it. That we blow off mental health issues in women. I mean, pick a reason, right? It's probably 20 different reasons why we're in this pickle. The false belief that outliving your ovaries is natural, which is not true at all, right? The false belief that natural is better, that's called the naturalistic fallacy. That's not true at all, right? So it's like, there's probably 20 things.
And we see that a lot. I hear that a lot from women. I actually seen a post you did today or a couple of days ago, and it was about how women will easily take supplements, but to take medication or because they want to be, more natural and they don't like taking medication. And I really want to ask this question, and I'm scared to ask a lot of doctors this question, but I'm not scared to ask you this question.
That's a good sign.
Where do you go as far to say to someone, so a woman who maybe really didn't understand HRT and doesn't like taking medicine, would you go as far to describe HRT like a supplement? Would you liken it to a supplement? Like, for example, if you had low iron levels, you wouldn't think twice to take iron, right?
Right. So, I mean, same with vitamin D.
Yeah.
And nobody's telling people who need insulin and thyroid not to replace that. Again, it's this like exceptionalism that we've put on hormones. And I think part of the problem is we've labeled them sex hormones because they were discovered in testicles and ovaries, right? But when we label them sex hormones, we dismiss what they actually do in our body, which they create the energy for mitochondria to function. They help ATP production, which is the energy of all cells. They help protect the myelin sheaths on your nervous system. They help your nerves communicate with each other. They help in the production of dopamine and serotonin, right? But if you call them sex hormones, that means they're like extra and not necessary. And like we only have on average 1 or 2 kids, so like we don't reproduce that much. So we've kind of dismissed them. Again, lack of knowledge of being like, yeah, we don't dismiss your vitamin D, we don't dismiss your insulin, we don't dismiss your thyroid, and so it's really this fake exceptionalism with these things. And the other thing with the supplements and over the counter is like, well, Viagra's over the counter in the UK, vaginal estrogen's over the counter in the UK, testosterone's over the counter in Mexico, DHEA's over the counter in America, but it's a prescription in Canada. Like, when I say all that to put up the point, like, what's a supplement and what's a prescription is all made up and it's all different in all different countries. Yeah. So like you deciding that that's the reason why is like, you realize that's all made up.
Maybe you can talk to us a little bit and explain that to people that don't know about the Lancet report and don't know about those things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first thing I want people to know is what's the best way to control a woman? Keep her afraid. So we're very, very good at keeping women afraid. And that's clickbait headlines. Again, women not being educated to know. I just did something on Instagram today debunking this clickbait was like, hormones increase a marker of Alzheimer's disease. Like, that sounds like a scary headline, right? But if you actually read the paper, you're like, no, that's not what this is saying at all. But it gets diluted, and what it ends up being is just a fear click headline. Because, what do you click on? You click on things that are scary, right? You look at the car accident. So the WHI was a massive study done in America, sponsored by our National Health, Institute of Health, trying to answer the question, giving older women, so on average age 13 years past menopause. That's the first thing. Does this even apply to you? Right? Yeah. So older women past menopause, if we give them hormones, do they have less heart disease? And so that was the question. The study was stopped prematurely, went to the press before it was published, so nobody could read it. So just like I said, you got to be able to read the paper after the headlines. What they did is they made the headlines without the paper being available. That's a first no-no. And they said, hey, we stopped this prematurely because it turns out that hormones cause breast cancer. Now, it turns out that hormones don't cause breast cancer. But that took a lot. And even some of the doctors were like, if you say that hormones cause breast cancer, because a lot of the doctors are like, you can't go say that. That's not what this shows. If you say that, the genie will be out of the bottle and we'll never be able to put the genie back in the bottle. And they were 100% right. Like, ever that went out, and we're 22 years, 23 years past the publication of the Women's Health Initiative now, and the genie's still, can't put it back in the bottle. So what we did was we told women that something their body naturally makes is trying to kill them.
I talk about this all the time, and I'm still just so baffled by the whole thing. It feels, even having conversations with my mum and other women that are older, they're genuinely convinced that it's a really bad thing, and it's so sad that this has happened to a whole generation of women.
Yeah, it's probably one of the most damaging and at the same time expensive things that we've done, because of the rate of more heart disease, the rate of more hip fracture, the rate of dementia, the rate of mood disorders. I mean, suicide risk in women is highest in the perimenopause transition.
Yeah.
Like, our inability to tell women the truth about what's happening, and our inability to tell women that there are safe, effective things they can do to help themselves, has created a ton of suffering. And like, we got to pay the piper at some point and be like, we may never admit, like, oh my God, we did this to an entire generation. But I do feel like we've got to try to make up for some damage that's been done.
Obviously, you talk about this a lot, and I know you're surrounded by an amazing group of female doctors who are really pushing this topic now. Do you feel like the needle is moving? You guys have for sure moved it a little bit, but does it feel like it is going in the right direction?
I mean, we sell out the Sydney Opera House. Yeah. So that's a good sign. But the stats are about 15% of Australian women are on hormones, about probably 5 to 8% of American women. It's hard to study Americans because we're so disjointed with our healthcare system, and we compound a lot of hormones. So it's hard in America, but anywhere probably 5%. The UK, what are you guys? Around 10 to 12% are treated with hormones. So keep in mind, 100% of women have low hormones after menopause. Yeah. By definition, that's what this is. So do you say does that mean 90% of women are educated and with an educated knowledge choosing not to take hormones? No, I don't believe that.
No, I think a lot of the education fails immediately because women don't actually know about symptoms. So women are so good at explaining things away. So, I mean, I can even talk about myself, for example. I'll say, oh, I'm so tired to my friends. Or, oh, but I have 2 kids. Of course I'm tired. Or I went out 2 weeks ago on a Saturday night. So of course I'm tired. We will excuse away everything. We are so good at not prioritizing ourselves and not kind of looking after self-care. And it's insane because we won't look into those symptoms and think, actually, something's wrong. What you then were seeing was women getting until they were at the end of their tether and they were pulling their hair out at the doctor, and then they would maybe be offered HRT, when this is something that could be started so much younger and women could be just living their best life, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think, when people are like, hey, where do you see this in 10 years? Where do you see this in 20 years? I truly think because it's happening now to the educated people who have access, right? That's where all trends start, right?
Yeah.
But I truly think it's like, why are we waiting for women to suffer?
Yeah.
Why are we waiting for you? 1 in 9 women will quit their job because of untreated menopause.
Yeah.
This is a profound financial implications to not feeling well. And so it's like, why are we waiting for women to become poor? Why are we waiting for them to have mental health crises? Why are we waiting for them to break a hip? Why are we waiting for them to have the Alzheimer's? Why aren't we preventing it. So to answer my own question is, I think in 10 to 20 years, there's going to be a like, hey, you're 47. You want to just start on a patch? You know,
Yeah.
the other crazy thing about the data is your biggest rate of bone loss is in the 2 years prior to you having your last period. Well, how the hell do you know when your last period's going to happen? Right? So it really does push the point of maybe we're supposed to prevent this in the first place. If we need to change our view that aging and frailty are synonymous, maybe they're not. Maybe aging and trying to optimize. We're still, this is not going to prevent us from getting old. It's not going to prevent us from having more birthdays. But the whole like frailty is inevitable is maybe we're going to look back on that and be like, wow, we let a lot of people suffer before we figured out how to optimize these bodies. After like, why would you not give reading glasses to people who are outliving their eye span?
A quick thank you to our sponsor, ESK Skincare. If your hormones have your skin acting out, ESK has your back. Founded by doctors, powered by real science, and designed for skin going through it. From surprise acne, breakouts to dryness, sensitivity, itching, and collagen loss, your glow up starts now. Okay, let's talk about hormones and science.
The word optimize there makes so much sense in this conversation, and I just don't think it's being used enough, like to optimize, you know what I mean? And
yeah, I think the term optimize makes sense to the average human, but it doesn't make sense in the culture of medicine. Culture of medicine, I mean, how many women have been told you're not sick enough yet? Medicine's not into optimizing.
Yeah, and that's why I kind of think, obviously, we can't say HRT is like a supplement. Obviously, that's incorrect, and we can't say that. But to help women kind of reframe the way they see it. And also, I think if women understood, a lot more women understood, you know, think of how much money you spend on skin creams and, you know.
Oh, I looked it up. $96 billion industry.
And so if women understood that actually, you know, taking HRT and taking hormones, again, might optimize some other things too.
I always ask, like, if it's something your body naturally makes, do we even call that a drug? You know, like, why can't there be another term for it to kind of change? Because you're right, people do have stigma, but I think, you know, you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater when you're like, I don't want to take any drugs. It's like, would you take an antibiotic if your foot had an infection? Probably yes. You know, like, not all drugs are bad by any means. You know, should we optimize lifestyle? Absolutely, we should optimize lifestyle. Like, hormones aren't the panacea for heavy drinking, not exercising, eating crap, like, right? Like, of course, all those things can be true. And, you know, I say this to people because it kind of gets them to think about it. But if men had a drug, call it a drug, call whatever you want to call it. If men could take something between the ages of 50 and 60, and on average, it made them live 2 to 3 years longer, do you think they'd all take that thing? And most people are like, yeah, the dudes would take that thing. And we're like, yeah, that thing is called estrogen for women. So why aren't we thinking about it that way?
I want to talk about testosterone. I know in the UK, barely anyone's talking about this. Somebody actually said the word to me the other day. They literally went, as in, you know, that's just for men and that'll make me hairy and like.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of stigma. There's a lot of stigma with testosterone. Again, it all comes down to lack of education. Like, what am I doing this for, right? I'm doing this so that women understand their bodies. So ovaries, adrenal glands, and then peripheral conversion, like our brain makes a little bit of testosterone. Like, we gendered the sex hormones into thinking that men don't have estrogen and women don't have testosterone. That's not true. Men have estrogen. Men have more estrogen in their bodies than a postmenopausal woman. That tells you how low the postmenopausal woman's estrogen is. If we believe men don't have anything, right? So all bodies have testosterone. Women, when they're cycling, make 4 times the amount of testosterone than estrogen. You can only make estrogen via conversion from testosterone, right? So you have to say all those facts first, because otherwise you're like this crazy American doctor who wants everybody on testosterone. And I'm like, again, I don't care if you take testosterone or not. I own no stock in the company. I make no money off of you taking, like, I don't care. What I care about is you being educated and understanding options to help you feel best in life. And at the end of the day, this is a neurohormone. Testosterone, I think, and this is a bold claim, but I will back it up, I think it's brain protective. We have that data in men. Just because it hasn't been studied in women doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And if any woman's going to wait around for 20 years for a frickin' brain study in testosterone to be done, it's not going to happen. So we have to use the data that we do have to be like, men with low testosterone have higher rates of depression and dementia. We know women have testosterone receptors in their brain. We know that women note brain changes when they're given testosterone, not just libido, but libido is created in the brain. That's what we have the most studies on. But no woman comes back to me after being on testosterone and saying, it only helped my libido. No woman ever says that. She says, I can do math better. I can think better. I'm more curious. My energy's better. All of these are brain things. Testosterone helps the brain. And like I said, like I have to use the data that we have to share this information. I'm not going to sit around and wait for more. Like your life is passing you by, right? Like make decisions with what we have, pray for more research, fund more research. But at the end of the day, these are brain neurohormones.
Again, fascinating to me because so in the UK, I'm sure you're aware, but in the UK, testosterone is not even offered kind of under the same umbrella as progesterone and estrogen. So progesterone and estrogen is offered kind of in traditional HRT, and you can get a certificate to get that in the UK, and it does not cover testosterone. And also testosterone they're completely gatekeeping it. So you have to go and see a specialist. You have to have been on estrogen and progesterone for X amount of time and have to have
like it's dangerous.
But there is no testosterone for females. It isn't. It's just been made for men. Again, laughing because it feels crazy. It feels crazy.
I mean, the numbers game is crazy. So America, depending upon like the year, I'll just ballpark. We have about 15 different products for testosterone for men. About 20% of men will have low testosterone, so not zero, but about 20%. For that 20%, we have 15 products.
Right.
100% of women will have low hormones after menopause. 100%, and we have 0 products. So it's complete gender bias. I do know enough to be like, it's gonna change. We're getting some female products, but if people aren't educated about it, if they don't understand why, if they don't understand that you can use things that aren't for the latest. So you guys have the same thing of like, we're probably going to get it approved for low libido. But to think that's all testosterone works for is laughable. That's not how our bodies work. That's not how libido works. Testosterone doesn't just work in this small 1 centimeter box in our brain that's labeled libido.
Yeah.
Right? And so for people to not understand, I mean, that's a big thing. So Australia has the first in the world government approved testosterone product for women. It is approved for low libido. So women have to lie to their doctor to say, I have low libido in order to get this hormone their body naturally makes. And in Australia, only about 0.3% of women are on testosterone. 100% of them have low testosterone after menopause. 0.3% are actually on the product. And at the same time, 40% of women struggle with low libido. Like we've got that data. So even if you're like, hey, libido's complicated, there's lots of things that can affect libido, but we have a approved product for low libido, of which 40% of women admit suffering from, 0.3% are on it.
I did have to say those words to somebody a couple of weeks ago because they were talking to me, and I said, have you asked your doctor about testosterone? And they said, oh yeah, they said no. And I said, well, I think you should try and push that. I think you should try. And I said, you will need to say that you've got low libido. So whether you do or you don't, you will need to say that. And they said, oh, why? And maybe that's why my doctor didn't give it to me before. And I went, yeah, well, if you want a trial of it, you will need to say, I'm not telling you to say that, but you will need to say that. That feels so counterproductive. It feels ridiculous that we would have to lie to a doctor.
Yeah, I agree. And it also threatens the sanctity of the doctor-patient relationship that you're not being truthful. Yeah. Right? Like I don't take that lightly.
Yeah. What do you think about a lot of people have comments regarding, oh, you've learned that off Instagram, or doctors will say don't Google things, and I get it. You shouldn't always Google things, but how do you feel about that? Because obviously you're huge on Instagram, and I know I've found your place a complete source of information, and thank God you are doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
But
Well,
what's your
yeah,
take
I
on
mean,
it?
it's 2020, it's 2025. How do people get their information? Social media, right? And so I'm like, listen, that's not going away. And if doctors don't speak up on social media, there's plenty of other people who are.
Yeah.
And there's a lot and I agree in somewhat of like, listen, the cognitive bias that comes with you being on a computer is like, if you Google search, you're going to find what you kind of want. The worst case scenario, I had a woman who had blood in her urine, which is never normal, always needs a workup, but via the internet decided that that was an okay thing, and delayed her diagnosis so long that it was actually a very bad scenario. And so to me, I'm like, but she's like, Google told me it was fine. And I'm like, you can go down a rabbit hole of confirming cognitive bias on social media. Like we know that.
Yeah.
But I think the other piece of it, when doctors say don't go to Google or blah, 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 is two things. Number one, it's quite dismissive. There's a lack of curiosity of like continuing that conversation, and a lack of time. Like at the end of the day, a doctor has 10 minutes with you, right? Like they can't go through everything you've done, spend hours Google searching. And so it is dismissive. But I don't think the world is that black and white of like, no, the internet's not all bad, my friends. It's not all good, but it's not all bad.
And I think also there needs to be some ownership here when we're talking about women's health, because the doctors themselves don't actually have that information. And what I'm finding that say, I wasn't taught that. I didn't have that information. I want that information and I want that education, but that are really speaking up and saying we don't have that, because I think there needs to be that as well from people's GPs, because they're going in and they genuinely don't know the information that you're telling us here. So for women to get it, they do have to go to Instagram or Google or other online platforms.
Yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, nobody should care more about your health and how you choose to live than you.
Yeah.
Right. You have every right to try to figure out what might be best. Now, at some point, I think, people can get into like, just put away the 120 supplements you've purchased. Like more isn't better for all of this optimization stuff. But at some point, like you do have to self-advocate, because nobody's going to self-advocate for you more than you are. And and if you feel dismissed, like, I just posted on Instagram the other day, like it's okay to get a second opinion. That's harder in some health systems. I understand, but it's okay. One doctor, it's foolish to think one doctor knows everything. They don't.
I think in the UK as well, it's really important when people are speaking to their GPs to ask who the specialist is, because there is meant to be a specialist within every doctor. So I always say to people that go back and ask, is there somebody here that specializes in women's health, and can I speak to them? And often it's not a doctor. Often it might be a nurse that's there, and she might, specialize in HRT. And so it's about seeking out and advocating for yourself completely. You touched on supplements again there. Mm-hmm. What type of supplements do you take? I'd be so interested to know if you prioritize anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's the whole like and I can only speak for America. Supplements are an unregulated industry. What does that mean? It means they're not allowed to make health claims. A large amount of them don't have in the bottle what they say on the packaging. It's unregulated. The rule with our FDA is basically like they have to cause harm in order for them to like be removed from the market. And some supplements have caused harm. So I just want people to understand, like, it is the Wild West as far as that goes. But like supplements I use, people don't think of these things as supplements. I heavily use the supplement called caffeine. Right? People don't even think of it as a supplement, but it's like something your body doesn't naturally make to enhance your life or performance. Like most of us heavily use the supplement caffeine. We just don't even, we use it so much we don't think of it as a supplement.
No.
Right? Things like fiber. Fiber is the recommended daily allowance is 25 grams for women. Some people would argue with that and say it's 30 grams. So fiber, because Lord knows it's hard to prioritize that in your day. I supplement protein. So protein powder, right? That's considered a supplement. So there's a lot of things that people like don't even consider to be supplements, but to me they're very practical, they're very safe, and there's great data behind them. Another supplement I have right here, creatine.
Yeah.
So creatine is cheap, it's safe, it's been around for ages. It probably has the most data on muscle and brain. The brain data is very interesting. So I would say that's an underused supplement that you cannot, if you're a vegetarian, you're definitely not getting enough creatine. But even if you're a meat eater, like the amount that's even in red meat, you can't eat enough every day. So doing that in a supplement has tons of data, vitamin D, magnesium, right? But anything that's like proprietary or a special blend, like anything that has sort of that sort of marketing, that's probably a nice warning sign to like, it's expensive and it probably won't help. And the other thing about supplements is like, there's a huge placebo effect. So, people will be like, oh, my sister said blah, 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 took away my hot flashes. Yes, placebo effects do that until they stop working and then your hot flashes will come back. Or your hot flashes went away naturally anyways. But like placebo effect is quite real in all medications. That's the argument with testosterone. Women are like, or, some experts, they'll be like, they're not actually feeling better. It's just the placebo effect. And I'm like, well, the placebo effect of antidepressants is like 70%. The placebo effect of erectile medications is 40%. So I'm not poo-pooing that, but you can't say women shouldn't get testosterone because of the placebo effect, because everything has a placebo effect.
Real talk. Midlife skin is a whole journey, and I'm not here for a 12-step routine which punishes my skin and promises miracles. That's why I love ESK Skincare. Their products are grounded in medical research and are well tolerated, which actually addresses hormonal skin issues like breakouts in your 40s, melasma, or collagen loss. I've been using their C-Forte serum, and let's just say, dewy not greasy, and my fine lines are finally backing off. If your skin needs a science-backed reset, head to eskcare.com, because we deserve skincare that works with our hormones, not against them.
The supplements that you just talked about, like protein, creatine, I mean, they used to be really targeted towards men. They kind of still are. Like, it's only now that we're starting to see them come out in like pink little packets or, you know, that type of thing. And they're being pushed now towards women. Yet they're huge for women, especially perimenopausal women. And protein is a huge thing. I seen a post on social media which resonated so much with. It said, I need to quit my full-time job just so I can focus on getting enough protein into my diet.
Hilarious.
Like,
so funny.
Me. Every day I'm like, I need more protein every day.
Yeah.
But these were pushed again towards men. Like it's just history repeating itself. We're seeing it again and again, aren't we?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, these are companies that, some of them want to help people, but some of them want to make money. And women are suffering. I don't think they're being adequately treated for their perimenopause and menopause by the traditional medical world. And so they are being preyed upon. Right? Your suffering is not being treated. So let me sell you my 12 herbs and spices, like at a very expensive monthly fee.
Subscription.
So they're not all bad, but they're not all good. And I think that's where the education comes in.
Regarding education, we talk a lot at the House of Hormones about educating men as well, because we think that's such a huge part of this conversation to bring men into it. For example, when I educated my husband on cycles and, what different types of food you could be eating in your cycle, that really resonated with him. So that got him interested in the conversation then, because he was like, oh, well, then you should eat this, this, this. And the conversation was then easier to kind of have. But how else can women get men involved into this conversation and try and get them to actually understand?
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think women just need to be like that lady who whispered period to you. Like, get comfortable with your own shit, ladies.
I know.
Because how you show up and normalize this is like, yes, this is what happens to our bodies in our 40s. Yes, this is what happens to our bodies in our 50s. It's similar to if somebody cut your testicles off. Yes. That's what this is.
I would also have the argument of, if we now know, and if we take the idea that testosterone is just good for women's libido, right? Let's just say it, but that was true. We all know it's not, but let's just say it was. Wouldn't you think men would be massively trying to push women to have testosterone, right? So maybe
totally.
that's going to take off in a big way.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we can't expect people who don't have our bodies to know more than us.
Yeah.
And I think that goes a long way. I think, to oversimplify libido in that it's just about testosterone. I know that's not what you are doing, but like, men don't even know that women could orgasm every time they're with them. And if women orgasm more, their desire for sex goes up because it's more of a dopamine reward. Right. So it's like there's so many layers of men not understanding women's bodies. And it's like, but women need to take ownership and fight for your orgasmic equality in the first place. Yeah. Right. And not think it's somebody else's job to give us an orgasm. It's not somebody else's job to say, hey, you should help your libido out with testosterone. It's good for them to know about those things. But we need to own that.
If you were having a conversation with a man, let's say you genuinely, what would you say to try and educate them on what's happening and how to understand that? And how should women be doing that with their partners or their sons?
Yeah, well, I mean, I really think as crass as it might be to talk about your testicles being removed, you've got to give people something that they can identify with. Yeah. Right? Like people who don't have ovaries, you don't know what ovaries are like, right? You have no idea. That's a spaceship thing, right? But you have testicles and you understand what the loss of your testicles might be like. Right. So you have to relate to something where you're like, hey, so menopause would be as if when you started in your 40s and your 50s, your testicles just got smaller and smaller. And then at some point didn't produce sperm and didn't produce testosterone. That's what happens. And we have simple, easy things that help us function, even though our testicles can't do our job for us anymore. And if there was a man whose testicles do stop producing those things, we would want to help them.
Yeah.
Those things are also true with women.
What's the biggest symptom that you see
in perimenopause? Mood change, sleep and mood changes.
Yeah. Because people think, why do people think it's hot flashes? Why do they think that?
I don't know.
But they do, like, that is what people associate. Yeah. All I hear, that I would say the one that I hear the most is brain fog.
Yeah.
I hear that all the time. And that, again, that's another one that women just excuse away. They just...
Dr. Lisa Mosconi, she's a PhD. She's doing amazing work looking at the role of estrogen and testosterone in brains in midlife and how that might be associated with Alzheimer's disease. She's amazing. She doesn't call it brain fog. She calls it neurofatigue. And I just like that better. It sounds a little more medical. It sounds less dismissive. It just doesn't sound like something that happens with a ship on the ocean. Like, fog. Like, what is fog, right? Like, oh, it's a cloudy day. Like, but neurofatigue of like, oh, it's brain stress enough that you're wearing it down.
Yeah.
That just seems more clear to me and more worthy of addressing than like, it's like a guy trying to understand ovaries. Like, you have no context to what brain fog is, but like fatigue, everybody's had fatigue. Okay, like I can get brain fatigue. It just seems, so I love her rebranding of that and I want to start using it more.
Again, it feels like another kind of needle move in the right direction, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. She's amazing. And the thing is, like, I was just in Australia and I validated this with some Australians because I'm like, listen, I just read that within a couple of years, Alzheimer's is going to be your number one cause of death. Is that true? And they're like, yeah, it's true. And I'm like, whoa. Okay. So we've got a number one cause of death with no cure. And we've got some good lifestyle interventions. Don't drink, exercise, a lot, get good sleep. But besides lifestyle interventions, we've got no prevention as far as like medications go. But the data does suggest that if you start hormones young, we have the more data for estrogen than testosterone. You've got maybe a 20 to 30% decreased risk of it.
Yeah.
Now, on a countrywide scale, that's billions of dollars saved. why is nobody like on the street screaming this? It's crazy that nobody is number one cause of death for Australians, and only 15% of people are on hormones. Like, it's insane.
When you say young, for everyone that's listening, what age are you saying?
Under age 60.
So in the UK, again, the age has been lowered to where kind of doctors will take women's symptoms seriously. It was 45 and now it's been lowered to 40. Okay. They did that very quietly in November. So a big deal wasn't made about it, but the age was lowered to 40, which is great because it means women can go be taken more seriously. Yeah. However, I would argue, and please tell me if you think I'm wrong, I would argue that age should be lowered to 35 because it's a very real possibility that perimenopausal symptoms can start at 35.
Yeah, well, I would argue, like, why are we putting an arbitrary age on it?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's more and more rare the younger you are. But, you know, it's the same thing. Like me saying 60, well, why not 60 in 2 months? Like, it becomes very arbitrary to say an age.
But for people listening, the idea is because so many women have genuinely believed the hype of perimenopause and menopause is just something that's way up there in your late 40s, 50s, 60s. And it's just not. You are having, the symptoms. You should seriously look into that, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, hormones are so essential and at the same time so ignored. Like, it's pretty crazy.
How does it feel for you knowing that just medical research has not been done on women, given that women's bodies are actually so much more interesting and can actually give birth to, like, make a baby and give birth and do so many other incredible things? But obviously that's one of the biggest incredible miracles of the world.
Yeah, thank you for acknowledging that.
Isn't it just bizarre that more research just wasn't done from the start in women's bodies?
Oh, it's totally nuts. It's completely crazy.
Like, it doesn't make sense anywhere.
No, it doesn't make sense.
That there was a lot of research done, but it was just covered up and not made available.
Well, I mean, that is true. So if you like, a lot of the papers I like looking at is pre-WHI. So it's, there was, especially looking at surgical menopause, right? Which is, so surgical menopause, your testosterone falls off a cliff. So, as does your estrogen. But so that's very interesting time. And so there's actually more data looking at testosterone and estrogen in surgical menopause. And Dr. Louise Newsom just did this research in the UK looking at, of the surgical menopause in the UK, what percentage of those women got estrogen in the hospital when their ovaries went in a bucket. Now, 5%. 0% for testosterone, but 5% for getting estrogen. Most of the studies on hormones are good after surgical menopause came before the WHI. And really, research stopped when we thought hormones killed you, we stopped researching it. So there's not a lot of great data. I mean, we're picking up now, Dr. Mosconi as an example, Dr. Newsom as an example. We're picking it up now 23 years later on. But a lot of the data is old. And so we go back and we share these old studies and people are like, it doesn't matter, it's old data. And it's like, you don't understand. That's when the research was happening. And then it got silenced because of the WHI.
We actually have just launched a petition to get more research done into women's bodies, a government petition. So I must share that with you.
Good.
So if just to kind of wrap things up, if you had one bit of advice for women out there at the moment, what would it be? Obviously, you talk about so many different things that are so important, but what could you kind of pinpoint at this particular moment in time that's priority?
What you're experiencing is real, and nobody's going to be a better advocate than you are. There are good resources out there. My book, the You Are Not Broken book, again, my You Are Not Broken podcast, right? They're both exceptional resources, not just because I wrote them, but like, they're hard won, right? Like, to put together all this other stuff is like an obsession of mine, but to be like, nobody's going to advocate better than you for your health. And as far as I know, we only got one go. So it does matter.
What can we expect from your next book in September?
It's very pro-hormone. So it's basically like, it's like study after study after study after study, because I don't want people to say we don't have enough data. I don't want people to say we don't know. To me, I'm like, we actually have a decent amount of data and we actually know a lot. It's just not trickling out. And I think the people who are vested in the status quo, it's always very easy to say we need more data. Yes, of course we need more data, but I need women to know what currently exists. We have like studies of studies at this point looking at hormones and women's health. And I want people to understand that. I've got an entire chapter on testosterone. I've got an entire chapter on how to talk to men. I've got an entire chapter on how to talk to your doctor. I have an entire chapter about like, what's the future? Like maybe in the future, menopause will be optional. Like, you know, we'll figure out regenerative medicine for ovaries. Like that's what they're working on. And so like my whole job will be done because there won't be any hormones to take because we'll just keep your ovaries functioning. Right.
Wow.
So like the future is exciting. And for people to think like this is just how it is, to realize like, no, you know, doctors used to think cigarettes were good for you. That was called the 1950s. So like things are always changing. So don't think that the status quo is how it's always going to be.
I am so excited for your book. So excited for your book. What's the book called?
It is going to be called The Menopause Moment.
I'm so excited. Is that an exclusive? Have you put that name out or?
No, I have not. Like we're about 6 months out right now from publishing. So I'm just started. The cover art's not locked yet.
We're so excited. Will you come back on the podcast and talk to us about
sure.
that?
Yes.
Thank you so much for everything that you do. Your work is so important.
Thank you.
And it's just so important what you're doing for women. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing. And thank you for coming on and speaking to us today.
Thanks for having me.
And everybody, make sure in September you buy Dr. Kelly Casperson's book. Absolutely.
If you enjoyed this episode today, don't forget to like and subscribe to the House of Hormones podcast. Your support really does help us reach more people and spread the word about women's health. If you want to stay connected, follow us on our social media. And here's something really important. We're on a mission to secure more funding for women's health initiatives. Sign our government petition today and help us amplify our voices for better healthcare resources and support. Together, we can make a difference. Thank you for being part of our journey. We can't wait to see you in the next episode.